recording but not streaming.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me when you're going on. You're ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's lovely to see our licensing committee, really excellent committee. I'm so pleased with you, everybody. We've worked really well together. My name is Counselor Evans, and I am chairing this meeting, which is being recorded but not streamed live. I'm joined by the members of the licensing committee as specified in the committee agenda. We will have 72 seconds of silence to remember those who lost their lives in the Grenfell tragedy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. I think this is a good point to mention two of our members who have passed away. We've had Councillor Blakeman, who was a deputy chair for a long time, 15 years. She was on the committee, added very good value. She had a lot of experience, and she knew many of the venues back in the day. Would anyone like to say anything about Councillor Blakeman? Yes, Dory.
I worked with her a bit, quite a lot. She was very good. I was very impressed with her. She had an interesting background, unusual in terms of how she got become a councillor, and sort of person. Although in the opposition, nice to work with. We worked together on a number of issues and was very cooperative. So I thought it was a very sad loss when she left the council.
Yes, she was very good value. Now I'd like to mention Doreen Weatherhead, who was in the council for 50 years. Councillor Lindsay would like to say a few words, and if anyone else would like to as well. She was really helpful, and I have to say she was ahead of her time in terms of licensing. But she also chaired tables and chairs, which she loathed, apparently. That's what I heard. But anyway, Councillor Lindsay, would you like to say something?
I was vice chairman of the committee, the Tables and Chairs Committee, of which Doreen was chairman for many years. And if she loathed it, I was completely oblivious to that.
No, not the job. Apparently she didn't like tables and chairs out there. She's not the only guy.
Okay, she made that may
That's
well
what
be
I'm
true.
saying.
That may well be true.
You see,
I recall her being a stickler for doing things properly. And I say this against myself. It was years ago, before most of you here were in the council. I was a young councillor, and I went to an event in the mayor's parlour just near here, dressed like Dory, in other words, wearing a jacket and tie, rather than like Arian, wearing a suit and tie. And she came up to me and she said, "David, don't you ever dare turn up like that, underdressed."
Oh, my.
If she only knew how the standards have dropped.
Exactly.
I couldn't possibly say that kind of blunt lie.
Don't worry.
No, I understand,
Exactly.
but I do make it a point of wearing a suit for full council. So Doreen loved doing things properly. She did do things properly. And it was sad the way in which she died so suddenly. But she was a very loyal servant to the council for many, many years, for half her life.
Thank
I
you.
think would like to say.
Yeah, if I could just say, I mean, I also was on the Tables and Chairs Committee, and I have to say, Doreen was a stalwart of this council. She had exacting standards, but she was also very kind, and she was very kind to new councillors. But when I was quite early on in the council, I was tasked with doing a review of tables and chairs. And, you know, I didn't set out, I'd set out to not upset Doreen, but unfortunately, she wanted things exactly as they were. And yeah, she did tell me off quite a lot for what I came up with, which I thought wasn't very radical, but she had her ideas. You know, you had to be so many inches away from this and so many inches away from that. And that's just the way she did things. But I have to say, overall, she was a very kind and very helpful councillor.
Oh, lovely. Councillor Wade.
The word that comes to mind is formidable. I think that actually Sharon and Fiona were present when we had a memorable massage parlour application for Earl's Court, where the applicant was Chinese, but do you remember that most of the ladies were Eastern European? It was clear, even for the officer that had visited the premises, that massage was in its kind of lucid.
Yes.
And Doreen was visceral. I have never ever seen anybody quite so. She cut them to pieces, didn't she? It was actually, if you'd had a sitcom, this was actually what a sex parlour should be examined. It was absolutely wonderful. And I agree that she was a butcher. She was polite, but she was absolutely laser sharp on that. It was extraordinary to witness. And I think one of the lines she said to the woman, if you can't speak English, how can you communicate? Can you give me the nationalities of your Eastern European colleagues? Can you communicate with them? And of course, the translator for her into English just didn't know what to say, did they? It was wonderful.
Thank you for that. Okay, anybody else?
I have known Doreen Weatherhead for decades, but not from a council, but from her role in the local conservation society, the Pembridge Association. And she did care about, as has been said, care about her job and care about the council and the residents. I suppose the one anecdote I can think of was when I went around collecting signatures for my candidature in the elections for 2018. I went round to Doreen. She was around number 4 on the list. We used to have to collect lots more than we do now, more signatures. And I was carrying around both forms. We're only a 2-member ward. My fellow candidate was living in the next door ward, not in Pembridge, which was the first time in about 40 years that there was a non-Pembridge resident. When I came to Doreen, she signed my form and said, "Where does Laura live?" I said, "Does she live in the ward?" I said, "No, just next door. I'm not signing." So it took me about 5-10 minutes to convince her to sign. Otherwise, I'd have to go to extra people to fill the gap. But anyway, she cared. And as I think, as Dave was saying about Stickler, I think she probably thought that you really had to live in your ward, but you don't, as we all know. But she was good. She was good.
And I thought it was a nice touch that till the end, she kept her Asian accent. I thought that was a very sweet comment that I heard. Okay, We're now joined by the members of the licensing committee as specified. I'm also joined by Holly Weaver, our committee officer. Okay. And can you please confirm whether we've received any apologies from members for this meeting? I think the only one missing is Toby Benton, is that correct?
Yes, we've received apologies from councillors Knight and councillor McVeigh. We may have missed apologies from councillor Benton, but I'll find out.
Okay,
Can I just say, I thought the councillor Bay come off the committee last week. Maybe.
I believe that she's staying on the committee until the end of the municipal year.
I have to say, I agree with councillor Lindsay. I thought so too.
Yeah, we spoke to the chief whip, but yes, yes.
Holly, can you confirm whether there have been any changes to the membership?
As far as I know, however, I may be proved wrong by the committee, so
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. We are also joined by our legal advisor, Lindsay Lemassurier. And we have Nima. What is your official title?
Oh, governance assistant.
Yes. What would we do without you? You coordinate us everywhere. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we have 3 items on the agenda for decision, namely the minutes of the licensing committee of 16 October 2025, pavement licensing, British summertime licensing, and licensing amenities on the highway fees and charges for 26-27. I think this is an area, please pay attention, where there will have been changes, correct? Yes, and a review of the licensing fees. I have no declarations of interest to make in relation to any of the items. Can I ask, does anyone else have any declarations?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So now we come to the minutes from the last meeting on 16 October 2025. Do members have any comments regarding the minutes of the meeting?
Just a geeky point on page 6, sorry, on page on the revision of the phone number. Shouldn't that be 020 7341? Because the code for London is 020, not 007.
Yeah, that's true. That
It's
was
a-
changed in a policy. Just to let you know.
This is a very common error because of the, never mind, because of the past, but
That's great. Thank you so much,
That's it.
Dory.
that's it.
So meeting, let's vote on the minutes. Approved, raise your hand.
It's approved.
Okay. The minutes have been approved. Pavement licensing, British summertime licensing and licensing amenities on highway fees and charges. This is a really exciting what's happening. So James McCool, can we have you please introduce this report?
This report was prepared to introduce our proposed fee schedules for the forthcoming financial year. As always, fees have been upgraded to account for inflation. But the main departure proposed is that henceforth, the proposal is for licenses on street, payment licenses, but also the licenses under the Highways Act for businesses that are hospitality businesses, each of a 2-year period. Or in the case of the British summertime licensing for the temporary terraces, authorization will be given for 2 seasons. If we're as you probably recall, as part of our authorization process for the British summertime license, there's 2 elements, and one of those elements is a payment license. So if we're granting 2-year licenses for tables and chairs and footway, it makes sense also to do the same for terraces. So that is how the proposals were divided. Obviously, there is some revenue implications of that. That down in the financial implications section of the paper, part 5. That's obviously been considered by the lead member and the director. There have been no implications for our budget in the forthcoming financial year, but for the following financial year, there will be budgetary changes bringing back to that. A key paragraph that I'd like to draw your attention to is paragraph 3.4, and that relates to the monitoring fees that are applied to applications for British summertime terraces. So we do levy a monitoring fee every year that covers the cost of officers who check on the terraces over the course of the year, and also, you know, if there's issues and reports is required, it's also cover that. At the moment, what we've been doing for the last couple of years is we've been levying that monitoring fee in 3 tranches. So once, say, around May, July, September, and in practice, that has proved a little bit difficult to administer, and also there's been some licensees who had issues with it in that when they had the first invoice, they thought they paid it, and then a second invoice comes up, and so paid down. So there is a proposal that this year, perhaps to levy the monitoring fee in one go in the middle of the summer. Now, there's pros and cons of that. One con is the fact that some licensees may only have their terrace for a portion of the summer and not all the summer. So previously, having the 3 tranches did allow us to say levy 2 in respect of a business that only had a terrace for a portion of the year. And also, sometimes we get late applications as well. Like obviously, we prefer most people apply around Easter so they get the full benefit of the season. But every year there's always a few stragglers. Some people do very late. So there is the question as to whether having a single fund is fair for such business.
Could I could I ask why you arrived at the 3 tranches in the first place? What was the reasoning behind it?
It's probably to do with administrative simplicity, trying, doing invoice runs on a particular day. We say we do the invoice run on, say 1st of May. And if you've got a license at that particular point in time, you're captured by the invoice run. Obviously, if you don't, you're not. And then another one. So it was just for administrative reasons, not sort of any ideological reasons.
So it's following on from that, how many people actually required licenses for the full period, and how many people only required, say, tranche 1 or tranche 2? I mean, what was the differential there?
Don't have exact statistics, but the majority of businesses obviously want to operate to get the full benefit of the summer. So most businesses operate for the full summer, but there's always a few businesses, more than a handful, that just don't recognize the opportunity initially, or they see other terraces going up, and then belatedly they say, "Oh, actually, this might benefit our business." So there's always a few very, very late ones. Yeah, they're the main ones. I mean, in some cases, there might just be an immediately open business, and that just didn't exist at the start of the season. Or, as is going to be the case this year, you might have a location like Kempston Park Road where there's highway works ongoing, and they may not be able to operate at the very start of the season. So under the way we would have done it previously, they might not be captured by the first tranche at all, and then just being invoiced for the second and third tranches. And it's fair to say we have found it sometimes difficult to administer that system.
It's challenging. It's very time consuming to actually invoice in 3 separate tranches. even though we our IT department to get those invoices generated by like an export from our database into the finance system, it is challenging and debt wise. Yeah, we get a lot, we do get a lot of queries because they get the first one, they might pay it, and then they do get the subsequent. They don't actually read what was saying on it. It's said because it's building up in the fund.
Can this be done in a direct debit? You have 3 payments, so that saves the work.
It's something that we can certainly look at and appreciate at the moment. We've got all sorts of problems with quality, finance systems.
And like that,
But yes, direct debits are much easier, I think, to collect. But again, they've got to be set out at the start, and it depends whether or not we can automate that, or whether we would have to actually raise some of those individually in order to set up direct debit. I think it's something from we should look at this year, but basically next year, but once we know
actually, can I ask anybody else?
I have a question, but not about this.
Mr. Hubble?
And about the invoice, if you provide insurance in full, can they afford to pay, or is there a time limit which says you have to pay from June up to that, or through the year? They can pay anytime.
I mean, that's another thing that you can do, is you can actually invoice it and then set up a payment plan. But again, these aren't things that we've done in life. We can't do it at premises. They have to pay $50. So we would need to basically investigate that we see with the team that it can be done. Whether it can be done for this season, I'm not sure, with all the other problems that we've currently got.
Right. Laura?
Is there a way that you could just do a blanket fee one off, and then the exception would be when there are exceptions, you take that as individual cases. So for example, if there is roadworks for 6 weeks and they're not using it, then they can say, hey, I didn't use it, can we, so then you're only dealing with 1 or 2 cases at a time, and everything else is just done one and done.
We can certainly do that. I guess the thing is, we pick a date, let's say we pick the 15th of June, that's the day that the aim to sort of fill everybody. Somebody might have already had their terrorist in April, April, May and halfway of June. Someone might have only got their terrorist yesterday. Is it reasonable for us to charge the same monitoring fee? I guess really what we're looking for is a steer from you, so that if we are making adjustments to those fees for those people, and like James says, if the roadworks stop them operating, that basically that's kind of gone through the committee process, and the committee's happy for us to do that.
Was it, sorry, just to follow up, because in my reading of it, I assumed just the summer hours, I assumed that it would be covering the whole term unless there was an issue. So why wouldn't it?
But it's just that people don't always apply, that's okay, because it is a 2-stage process, so they have to put in their expression of interest so that we can suspend the parking, and then they've got to apply for their payment. So it's only when they've got their payment that they're actually good to go. Once they, we suspended the day, they've got their payment license, but that's when they're good to go. And if they, for whatever reason, delay putting in the one part of that, then they're not going to get it for the whole season. I mean, that a lot of the time it is down to the individual businesses.
So the season now is going to be 2 years. Can you explain?
Yeah, so explain how it works.
There's a basic thing in this paper that mystifies me.
Yes.
That if you're going from 1 year to 2 year, fine, why is it the same price?
Yeah.
I mean, that is kind of screaming out to us. They are getting 2 years for the price of one, and there is no indication why that should be. And I understand you want to have to raise it by 5%, fair enough. But if you're actually giving people 2 years rather than one, why don't you charge them 1.5? Because no one's going to apply for 1 year, they're going to always apply for 2 years. And that might cause you problems in terms of enforcement, but there doesn't seem to be any reason why you're charging the same price.
So when people, so the proposal is when people apply and, you know, it's assessed against, you know, context and whatever representations we receive and it's found acceptable, it will, proposal is it will always be granted for 2 years. So there will be no option to apply for 1 year. You're applying for payment license and if it's acceptable to apply, you will be granted for 2 years. The reason why the proposal is to now issue 2 years is basically to reduce the bureaucratic burden on business to less red tape, so they don't have to do the same thing twice.
That's fine, but why is the price not double or 1.5?
Okay, so in terms of payment licensing, they're statutory fees. We've no discretion, we can reduce them downwards, but we can't increase them. So they're capped by law at £500 for new applications and £350 for renewals. So then, since 2024, we've been granting licenses for 1 year, 1200 months for that application fee. So in terms of processing the application, the costs are more or less the same, but it will be granted now for a period of 2 years instead of 1. We can't increase the fees of the staff and the reason why we're proposing it is obviously to support the hospitality industry because there's a lot of costs that is down earlier and there's a lot of cost pressures. So this is twofold, to reduce the cost on hospitality businesses who are facing a lot of challenges, and also to reduce the amount of red tape. It's bureaucratic, I wouldn't like to call it just bureaucratic burden.
So are you,
It's one second, it is going to be more because it's 2 years rather than 1.
But only if there's an issue.
Without
For the summertime terracing, they will pay a monitoring fee. What they won't have to do though is apply for licenses for the pavement extension.
And the point is really, one second, everybody, the point is really, if there's less work for you, that's the point, which means that don't have to charge double, is that the point? That
Well,
it has to come in?
we can't charge double, so obviously every council has fixed costs. So there won't be full cost recovery, but certainly if we're only processing an application once in a 2 year period rather than twice,
Right.
there's obviously less cost.
Right. Okay, anyone? Yeah, one second, please.
I think it was good report. I think what it really lacks is it would have been quite nice to see what the impact, you say that there'll be lots of revenue, but it doesn't give us any figures. But what is have I missed it?
There is one figure at the end, which is it's sort of a universal figure.
Which is
I mean, it's at 5.1.
At the bottom, 116,000.
Oh, yeah, okay, average normal. I think if we're using revenue, if the payment licenses cap in statutory at 5.5, I agree with, Councillor Rossi, that if we're losing this money, we want to help, then we should have some, then why are we rushing to do it, for 2 years? Or either we charge slightly more, if you think that's given the crimes.
But
It's 2 years as well, so
2 years, could you not do like a direct debit or something for an amount, cover the cost that would be lost?
Okay.
Second year.
And the other, sorry, one other question I'm going to put to you is that on the levy, I'm a bit unclear. If we do it just one figure every time they charge, could we not just make it pro rata of, how many months they're applying for?
Okay, maybe we'll try to talk about each sections separately, right? So there's two elements. They're sort of all mixed up in the conversation. There's two elements. The first element is payment licensing, pure payment licenses, which are covered by the Business and Planning Act 2020. That act allows you to issue payment license for a period of up to 2 years, and it also caps the fees. Now, payment licenses are issued, all over the borough, and the majority of them apply to premises that just have tables and chairs on a standard footway. And I think the view is that most of our licensees, don't give any issues at all. There's no complaints during the course of the year sitting on the footway. And the view is, well, if these businesses are operating quietly, and many of them have been here for dozens of years, they've just been continuing on, rolling on. Why should they have to apply every year when the law does provide for licenses to be issued for up to 2 years? So that's the proposal. I mean, obviously, each application that comes in, we have to process and ultimately issue the license. There's some cost in that. If we only have to do that every 2 years, there's less processing involved.
That makes sense. You have 2 more questions? Someone else? Yeah.
You said there were 2 reasons for the proposal, one of which was to reduce the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Roughly how much does it cost? For each application to be processed? Just helpful to know, ballpark figure.
So a new payment license application,
All of the.
yeah, we can, and this is not just us, this is government and also other fellow local authorities. The view is that the full 500, it costs about £500 to process one of these applications. So fees, in terms of all our functions here, we can only really levy fees to recover costs. We can't, we're not supposed to profit from them. So, yeah, so fees, it costs us roughly £500 to process one of those applications.
But in terms of actively based costing, it would be about 500, would it?
Is it cost neutral?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is more or less cost neutral, but obviously in terms of resourcing, there are implications because for a period at least there will be fluctuations in the balance.
Linda?
What happens if it's a two-year license? What happens if there's a change of ownership, if a restaurant change hands or closes down? Does it carry over and is it attached to the actual pavement or is it attached to the business?
It's a good question, because how will you assess the operator, new operator? Is it a shadow, like a shadow license?
So obviously there's different regimes. So there's also the premises licensing regime, which focuses obviously on the operator particularly. The payment licensing regime is mostly about making sure the highway isn't obstructed. And having said that, when you apply, the person who applies has to, on the application form, give the name premises, I think, and the license is issued in relation to that premises. Now, it could be the case that a business is sold on, and in that case, I imagine the payment license would still endure.
So you couldn't effectively recharge a new business for that license? I mean, I'm just saying, because the reason I ask is if part of this regime is to monitor and enforce, if you have changed the business, actually, wouldn't it be a good idea to be able to say, fine, you charge the new business operator, say it goes from a pizza parlor to a kebab shop, actually, that they need to be made aware of the terms and conditions, i.e. keeping it clean, keeping it safe and everything else, and this is one way of securing that.
So we've done a bit of research whilst we've been talking, and it is true, you can't transfer them, no. So we can break that clear in the guidance, that they're non-transferable.
So if it's a new owner or a different business, then we'll have to apply for a new payment license. Good.
Good.
Yes, yes.
One second, Tori speaking.
On paragraph 3.4, and indeed the table 336. Regarding the charging, I mean, I get that, trying to cut down the admin, that would sound very sensible. But I was just wondering, and why not charge them early in the season? I mean, the season actually starts effectively on the 1st of April, the last weekend of March, so the time changes. So charge them, say, May, and for late applicants, charge them less, say, whenever, let's just fix a fee. So if they're late, just charge them 2/3 or half. So that way you've got you've got a little bit of flexibility taking into account late applications. And then, yes, that's it really. And then if there are exceptional circumstances, like suddenly there's roadworks and they can't complete this 6 months, consider giving them a rebate, that's all. But I think the majority of cases seem, as you say, cover the whole period. The next lot is maybe the late starters, just charge a bit less. And that's it, then you've got a system.
All the special events, if you something, for example, around Chelsea Flower Show, you might have effectively pop up. How do they get charged?
I think there's anything that's sort of extremely temporary, like a week or something, which you won't relate to hospitality business. It will be more like an event that is managed by.
No, but I mean, you certainly have pop up hospitality around Stone Square, for example. I just wondered whether there's.
But none of those are licensed under any of these regimes. Anything it's temporary, like that temporary is not really captured by any of these.
Good point.
But I had a follow-up, I'm sorry,
Sorry, Dory,
Can I-
Laura's going.
I had a follow-up to what I was speaking, I said I wanted to raise the thing. The £116,000 deficit, or potential deficit for having 2 years, and it says it could be compensated for by issuing fines. What fines? Better monitoring regime.
That's across the sort of the scope of the council as a highway authority. It's not specifically related to tables and chairs at all, so it could be people placing waste on the street.
Yeah, and what changed? When did this change come into place? Sorry, this was the last thing on this. When that you cannot apply for payment license or tables and chairs, the old regime, because I remember there was a period after the payment license was introduced, you could do either.
Yeah, that's right.
When did that change?
So there was it's the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023, changed the regulations, and they came in I think the 31st of March 2024.
Next.
Yeah, well, Councillor Burns.
So I would like to know actually how much to bring in, like how much because I know you just gave one figure of what reduced, and is that for tables and chairs, or is that for the second one, temporary footwear?
It's the whole lot, yeah.
Okay, so how much currently are they bringing in? And so what would the just numbers would be when they're not bringing that in every year?
Okay. Would it be okay if we come back to this maybe after the next slide?
Okay, sure, yeah.
Okay, one more, Linda, or Dahabo hasn't spoken.
Yeah, so my question is simple. And the table one, minimum licensing, the client and the proposal, they are the same. And we have a lot of budget cut it. And you can we thinking to increase as a proposal.
It's table one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 500, the client and the proposal.
Yeah, those fees are statutorily set, so we cannot increase them.
Anything urgent? Yes.
It's about enforcement. If you're facing this type of production, how is effective enforcement of credit and shares going to be covered.
As far as I know, it won't be affected, so the
How
enforcement,
many officers do we have actually?
it's the SET team, so the SET team, street enforcement team are responsible for enforcing. And they go out and they will monitor, report back to us if there's anything, you know, untoward. If tables and chairs are set up incorrectly, also with each license, there's various conditions, so they're responsible for enforcing those as well. That shouldn't change and it should carry on as how it is at the moment, if not better.
So really following from you, your question, with the SET team, that will also, they will follow up on residents' complaints. Is that correct?
Well, at the moment, it's a mixture between licensing and SET, so, the complaints, majority of the time licensing will deal with complaints and get back to the residents. If it's to do with enforcement, then we leave it to the SET team to enforce.
But are they proactive?
They are. So they do report back to us regularly. They have an inspection form that they complete and then send it to licensing. I can't remember the right term, James. Is it to a verbal, written?
Yes,
Something like that, yeah.
yeah, so about 2 or 3 years ago, this committee agreed a revocation process. And it's a 4-stage process. First 2 are verbal warnings, albeit confirmed in writing later. And the third one is a written warning, and then the 4th time it will come to a or the chair, depending on circumstances, to consider whether relocation should.
Can I ask how many votes in the last 1 year?
None.
Okay.
It's-
No, great question. If it's important, yes. Maria hasn't spoken.
Okay. Aaron, do you want to go first? It's just about A boards. I know we don't license them 4.6, but what's our attitude towards them? It's just that I've got a complaint about a bus stop and a A board and whatever at the moment that still with. Do we not allow them? Or
I'm gonna look to James for that one.
We don't license them, and then if something is an obstruction, you know, we're expected to enforce it first. We also have streetscape policies, as you know, which is all about having very limited clutter. So we certainly don't encourage them, don't really wish to have them. But clearly there are a few in our streets. So ones that are on sort of our primary high streets are the ones that are generally prioritized for enforcement action.
and do I go to the steps too? On that one?
Yes. So, so they will come to view whether it's causing harm in terms of obstruction.
So if it doesn't cause harm, then it's okay.
Well, it's obviously it's subjective as to whether it's harmful or not. Obviously, different people take different views. Some people obviously dislike A boards. Obviously, the SET team have to consider, you know, whether if they're going to prosecution, whether there's strong case. So, you know, yeah. Consider that.
There was an interesting point about A boards, and one criteria, which isn't official, but it is a good rule of thumb, is that it should not affect a blind person walking down the street, because if they feel it and it's in front of them, that's not a good point. And that was always a good rule of thumb, making a complaint. Arnie?
Yeah. So the loss of revenue is quite huge. Obviously, you said issuance of fixed FPMs would probably, you know, mitigate that. Is there a historic number of FPMs? Or I don't know if I missed that during the conversation.
I will find that out. I can answer the reference question now. Which is no, I've done research your question now, right?
The latest one.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, so for this forthcoming financial year, where we don't think there'll be any impact, we are projecting our revenue from payment licensing and also summertime terrace income cumulatively to be about £263,000.
Anything else, Victor?
One was, obviously the changes, reason for the changes, more of an administration administrator. Did you look at any automation or look to IT to resolve that? Or?
So in terms of the proposals are mostly about making things easier for businesses, etc. I mean, there's the administration point, which is really more of a side question about how we actually collect fees. So actually, in terms of the actual thing for a decision, it's just the fee schedule. If we were just looking for your input onto how we should actually administer the fees, in a sense, that's inside. But actually for decision, it's the fee schedule. So to answer your question, have we looked at systems to administer payments?
I mean, yes, we have, we automated it as much as possible. Ordinarily, the applications, when they come in, they're automatically pushed into the database. So, we've still got administrative work to do, but we're not keying in that data. Fortunately, at the moment, the whole system is down. There's nothing that can be submitted online, nothing can be put onto our database. So that is normally automated anyway. The email alerts for the payment licenses is all automated from the point of submission. In terms of the invoicing, we have to create the customer details on our finance database, but the actual generation of the invoicing and the passing of data from our database to the finance system is automated. So we have worked with IT over the past few years to develop systems to try and automate as much as we possibly can.
Okay, anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Yeah, a quick question, we're moving.
I just want to voice that I think, I mean, I know this year, financial year, James, you said we won't have a lack of revenue, but I think £116,000 going forward, I think it's a lot of money. And I think I don't find any confidence in the fact that we could possibly make some of it back by issuing PCNs. I think that's a bad formula, and I think we need to.
Sorry, could you repeat your point?
So we're saying that going forward, there's a loss of revenue of 116,000.
Right.
And given the financial constraints that we're going to be facing, and hoping, and we're doing this entirely due to an administrative, one of the administrative.
Yeah, no, just so I'm clear, so the rationale is primarily to support hospitality businesses and to reduce the sort of.
Yeah. I just think that's a huge loss of revenue, and I don't feel confident in the fact that we might recoup some of it, through issuing PCNs, because over here we don't have the data of how many PCNs we have. Yeah, some sort of historic breakdown in this report would have been very helpful.
Okay.
But you're not using that as a business model to recoup from getting.
Can I just add to what Christy is saying, that if you are I can completely understand you administratively you want to make things easier, but you're doing so at a loss of, a whole year. Every 4 years, you're losing 2 years of revenue. And I also understand that you want to help hospitality businesses, but we need to spell out what the choices are, because we are actually losing revenue by going to 2 years. And so we might as well say that, and then we have to ask, we want to help hospitality, but can we afford to help them so much? I think that's what.
Yes.
And is this necessarily the best way to do it?
Yeah.
And not against our expense.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot.
It's a huge amount.
And like the chair said, Janet, that's not a business model to issue FPNs, as in.
Yeah.
In order for an estimate, because we lose all, we can issue FPNs.
I have to, I didn't like that.
That's not the principle of.
It's not how we should operate.
You know,
Exactly.
Can I ask, are there any fees not kept lit by statute, temporary footway extension fees. If they're not capped, can't we raise them to help compensate?
We have to make sure any fees we levy are related to costs.
All of them.
That's everything, yeah. So
Like
we can't just say, oh, we can't basically rent out the highway. We can only levy charges that are related to costs that will be incurred by the council.
But if we lose on one aspect, can't we compensate? Because that's part of the licensing cost. So you make less income from one side, maybe raise income on another.
Can I just step in here? It's just to reiterate what James is saying, it is just about cost recovery. We can't raise revenue down other avenues.
That is cost recovery. Is it?
Whatever we charge for issuing a license, be it for the summertime licenses, terraces, or the pavement licenses, then we can't, there can't be a profit element.
So currently, we can charge £500 for a pavement licence every year. And the proposal is to charge £500 for 2 years, so there is a loss of revenue there.
50%. Well, let's see what the costs are. We have to see what the costs
You
are.
can put in like overheads. Rather than revenue, you can call it, extra cost for the. Yeah,
So you said,
rather than, you can call it revenue.
Is the cost recovery limited to the sector? In other words, payment license fees must only cover the cost of payment license, or is it overall licensing? That's my point.
You can use the word
Pardon?
revenue.
It can only cover the sector.
Right,
So
okay.
if you lose on premises licenses, you can't make that up by charging gambling more because you're losing on premises.
So why do we have these?
Sorry?
If fees that are applied relate cost recovery, how have you, how do we have this debt?
It's not a debt.
Way.
It's not a debt. That's the point though.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but we need to find out, because I asked for the money in, how much money's coming in, but the next question is how much actually goes out. So the fee, and let's see what the difference is.
We need some more figures here.
Yeah.
Actually, this was recommended by the leadership. It didn't just come randomly from our finance people. Some from our finance people who obviously thought that it would save some money for the council.
Directors, they considered this is something that's worthwhile, before submission.
Responsible in the leadership team for this.
Sorry,
Johnny,
at the time, was it at the time them or
was it
This
Jan?
is,
the finance person?
but Johnny Talasita is the lead member with responsibility for this area.
Okay, perhaps,
And have he seen it?
Yes.
he proposed it.
Okay.
But
No, I mean, it's not just a random thing,
That's fine.
everyone's putting in,
I still don't understand.
If it's been through the
why.
leadership team, I'm happy to.
I agree with you, there's.
Well, I would still like to raise.
Sorry,
I think this is the licensing.
Yeah,
committee,
absolutely.
And we can.
This is what we hear for.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
this is what we're for.
Agree.
So we'll ask these questions.
So my question would be, once again, I know you did your due diligence on the money in, but if you could tell us how much like it actually costs to do that for like a year, or even maybe 2, if it's every year, it doesn't matter. But and then we know what the cost is and what the money out is, and then we can decide whether that is fair enough to do a 2-year thing, or maybe there should be a breakdown with the second year having some extra fee to cover the bit that might slide over, because you say it's statutory for 1 year, so you'd have to find another way to then pay the extra.
So with payment license, it's important to two elements, so I'll try to go through both elements. So with the payment licensing, the fee is an application fee. We're not allowed to levy a fee on monitoring and enforcement, yeah. Then for the summertime terraces, where we have a footway extension fee, there's 2 elements, there's the implementation fee and then there's the monitoring fee. So the proposal is obviously to levy the monitoring fee throughout 2 seasons. So it's not like we're getting on our own with the second year today. So we're getting substantial. a very sensitive question.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I don't think I'm able to answer here, other than, I think all our fees are set on a cost recovery basis. So if we're taking in £260,000, you can, it's reasonable to assume there's £260,000 going out in terms of cost. Now, the costs are, you know, costs of our salaries insofar as, you know, we deal with tables and chairs and obviously other officers who are doing right now. So, you know, it's opposite time really. And I think it's fair to say that our costs should match our revenue. So obviously with less revenue, we're doing less processing, which should be less cost. But necessarily, of course, there's some fixed costs there, you know, has to be.
So is that the number 116?
116 is the projected average annual loss as a result of giving 2-year payment life and also giving 2-year authorizations for the.
In terms of the number of business hours.
I mean, in terms of the areas that are covered by this payment, which is basically licensing tables and chairs on the highway, which includes those in the footway, it also includes those on the temporary terraces over the summer, and a very, very small number inside hairdressers and that. The cumulative cost of moving everything to 2 years is estimated to be 160,000.
And how much buffer do you have in that?
Okay.
What if it's greater? And do you have any more percentage of? Chair, I will just say one thing. I mean, personally, I would like to see some more figures, and like £116,000, a projected figure. In my opinion, is enough, given the financial constraints we have to suffer.
Is it a net loss?
If we are settling fees on a cost recovery basis.
Yeah.
Then surely we should be washing our face and not have a lot of 160.
It's natural that part of the reason for this is to make life easier for
I know, but not in such a huge.
Decision that is made,
decision that
and it has to be set out in those terms.
Okay, Abdullahi would like to say something.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm along with, I think Greek Alliances. I think we should not be losing money. It should be based on profit recovery. And if year on basis is better, then I think we should stick to the year on basis rather than 2 years.
Can I just say something? I think Stephanie, you want to say something too?
No, I was just building on David's point. It's not part of our manifesto to actually absorb costs for licensing in order to promote businesses. It's a very peculiar policy. Whilst I'm very much in favour of supporting hospitality, I think there are other ways in terms of policies that the council can decide to activate. Using that argument in that particular case, I don't think it's a sustainable policy, because that means we're accepting cut costs during financial constraints, exactly. But this is not a direct policy. We have absolutely zero proof that it works. You know, we have zero proof that having basically an extra year for free of payment licensing will boost hospitality business.
I think we're trying to make, what I'm getting, listening to everyone, you're all making really good points, and I understand where you're coming from. What we have to do is not make correlations one-to-one. We're correlating it to different things. We need to know from Lindsay what our legal parameters are in this, what the position is, and how much room we have. This isn't a finance. So I'd like to hear from Lindsay, the policy, what our constraints are, and what we can actually do. There's no point, because just discussing it from making correlations between different things, profit and loss, and helping hospitality, etc. There's a global point here, And let's hear from Lindsay and give us some direction, because we're just going around in circles, and I think the committee is really missing the point. I understand the concerns, we agree with the concerns, we have to stick to the point. Yes.
Well, I think all I can really add on stuff, kind of things is the.
Can you all hear?
Sorry.
Sorry, you all hear?
Sorry, I think that the point is, Cetus is the portfolio holder, and there's obviously been a steer to formulate this policy for 2 years rather than 1 year. Obviously, it's for the full licensing committee to sanction the fees. Obviously, there's a time constraint in that the fees need to be sanctioned by the 1st of April.
Actually, well, we've got onto that, but there's obviously the British summertime licensing process will actually start tomorrow following this committee, really.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think about
And
that.
I think we're not really sanctioning it. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
From almost everyone on the committee.
Were you now Mr. McCool to comment whether it's a gross revenue loss or?
So it's,
net?
yeah, so up to the figure of 116,000, that's a less revenue. So as discussed, there'll be less cost as well.
So do we have a net?
So it's not a loss, it's a less revenue.
So do we have any idea what the net reduction in?
That is to be determined in budgeting next year. It might be the view that because we've got 2-year licenses, we need less officers. That view hasn't been taken. If that view is taken, that would happen in the budgeting for the 27-28.
And less time spent, even of existing officers spend less time that than doing something else.
Yes, yes. So it's not a loss, it's less revenue, and the impact of that will be felt in a year's time. And how that's dealt with in the budgetary sense will be figured out next year.
Right, and the leadership team was obviously okay with that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I think we should either adjourn for 5 minutes, or I could go and get Johnny to come in and address us. Or I can, and then we'll come back. I'll see if we can get him in.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense, because I think the committee in many ways makes important points, but I don't think they're relevant. There's a difference. I think they're relevant to a different aspect of this, and I know that leadership is not trying to get us to lose money, so they might have a thinking about where we can make it extra. Yes.
Chair, so if you can clarify, what is the point of this committee? Is it, are we only supposed to say if legally it's all okay and the leadership is happy that we just second it? Is that? No, because we
You the power to understand or make the decision is with the person.
are we allowed to scrutinise this?
You must allow to, you must.
It's not a scrutiny. We are discussing it, and everyone's throwing out very good
But
ideas.
it's for decision.
Yes.
And the way, I would say it's almost the way the paper has been set out, that we haven't got the choices in front of us.
We don't have any data.
Janet, you want to go off and get
Yeah, I'm gonna go and see if I can get Johnny in.
Can we get a break, 5 minute break?
Yeah.
Hello, Jem.
Yes. Jen had the portfolio last, and then Johnny's had portfolio now. He will explain the global picture, and then I think we're able to vote, but instead of speculating, let's hear the thinking, okay?
Thanks, Janet. So, yes, obviously this comes with a revenue cost to the council. We are acting within the law. When they first introduced pavement licensing, it was quite an onerous system to have to do them every single year. The government then changed it to allow it to be a 2-year license. So we are essentially following something that the previous government had implemented. It does mean that it is a less active licensing regime because it's a 2-year system rather than a singular year. We still do have the ability to call in licenses if and when there's problems. So from a business standpoint, this is an awful lot less admin to have to go through every year. And as somebody that has one of these licenses and forgot to renew it last year and then had to pay the full fee for a new one again, I have some sympathy with the business community about just the level of pain that they're going through. Business rates, we all know, the retail reliefs are changing. We're seeing national insurance going up. And in our view, as the administration, is that we're here to try and support our businesses. And it's a fairly small contribution to the system, given how much more their rates are going up on the business side. It is at the time when we obviously have had our major funding cut quite severely. So we are very, very conscious of the fact that we need every penny we possibly can. But we also want this borough to be a sort of a positive and successful place. And broadly, I think actually we've shown that as a council, we're quite keen to reduce red tape, things like Johnny had led on the double glazing, then we're doing the heat pumps, and windows and mansards. All these things essentially do all cost us money because we're removing planning permission and we're removing planning fees and we're removing applications and pre-apps. And this is just one more of those things where there is a potential cost to the town hall. But if we look at some other places, such as Exhibition Road, where they applied for I think it was a 5-year planning permission, that's a singular application for 5 years. This would be a singular application for 2 years. I do know for the licensing team, it's a change in their approach, and it will mean sort of, especially at the beginning, it will be very cyclical. It will come in every 2 years, but over time, when new businesses pop up, it will sort of smooth out that there'll always be a flow of work year on year. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I hope to take questions, but that's really the thinking behind it, was give a little bit back to our businesses.
So I think the way the paper is set out, it didn't say any of that. And it didn't have enough of the overall figures of how much revenue that you get from this, how much revenue we will lose from going from a 1-year to a 2-year scheme. And to be honest, we had to tease out why are we doing this?
Sure.
And then we got it, but it could have been set out like that in the paper with more figures and explanations. And then I think we wouldn't have pulled you in to explain things to us.
So well, fair enough. And yes, this was programmed, but obviously the paper could have been drafted more clearly. I'm going to look at James here because obviously under the previous regime, when we were charging per chair, per table, my assumption, my gut instinct was that we were making an awful lot more money from that. But is that true or not?
Per business, we had more revenue.
Per business. So even a shift to the pavement license in the first instance was at a cost to the town hall. We obviously were very keen on them during COVID and obviously the government shifted the law, so we had to do it. But there was a revenue impact on us getting away from our historic tables and chairs license, which they can still apply for if they want.
No,
Not anymore.
Okay.
You see, I've been out of licensing for too long. But yes, so we've obviously taken a hit when that regime swapped over, and we'll be voluntarily taking a little bit more by swapping to 2 years.
And see, Jen, what would be helpful, but I guess it's maybe difficult to estimate, is what the actual net loss is.
I think it's about 110,
apply for and they do it, but it could be a lot slicker, I'm sure, and probably easier for the officers as well if they had a better digital base.
Yeah, why, I mean, have businesses asked for this? And why are we doing this when, you know, given, okay, 116,000 is still 116,000, it's a lot of money given, you know, the financial shortfall we're facing. Not only that, what is the buffer? This thing, how accurate is it? You know, I mean, it would be quite nice to have a little.
Yeah, James, give you
You know,
that.
it's, and do we, you know, is that really going to help businesses? I mean, we're talking about a small amount. And should we be really going down this path?
So,
and unless they come back and say, well, you know, it's no, as a council, we're pretty tolerant. We've all said, you know, they don't always apply in time, all their administration costs. And if you're going to do this, then we have to go ahead with a zero tolerance as well, slightly. You know, there has to be a time limit when they're applying. So the officers are not independent spending time chasing payments and all that. I mean, we can't do everything. Yeah, and I think they're very guilty.
So it could be late fees.
well, there's a good point there. So have business last year. Johnny will have more up-to-date issues and complaints. Certainly, if for a very small business, it is not immaterial amount of money. If you are, you know, if you're Starbucks and you want a table outside, this is just rounding error. Are we here to help Starbucks? Not so much, but can we discriminate between businesses? I don't think so. So at the bottom end, if you're a small shop on Broadwan Road or Portobello or whatnot, and your rent, okay, let me just give mine as an example. I pay £17,000 a year in rent, and I'm paying £500 for a tables and chairs license. So that's equivalent to 40% of a month's rent, just on getting the permission for the chairs. Do I recoup that by having the chairs, tables and chairs? Probably, because if I didn't have it, it's an even more loss-making taxi shelter. But I'm probably at the very bottom end of scale as well. That if you throw business rates on top, I still am lucky enough to get business rate relief. But if I were to slip up a bit, if I was a bit bigger, then you suddenly are contributing, and that's a big hit. So businesses don't. You see at the moment they're complaining about the pubs tax and rates relief. There is a general sense that they're quite overly regulated and quite overly burdened on these things. Salaries are the biggest one, and we don't have control. We don't have control over salaries. There's a few elements that we do have control over, and you know we're not saying the fee is zero. They still have to pay in the form and do the things, and it is compliant with the 2-year permission. So it is available to us. We could have swapped to it last year or the year before. And then your last one was about the accuracy of the figures.
Yeah.
I think.
To answer your question, Councillor Lewis, there is it because there are a lot of our systems down or etc. It's quite difficult to actually get the exact figures of the revenue. So there is probably a degree of it's a rough estimate. So there's a chance the figure is
Absolutely.
So just get mine. Question principle. I take it as a given that the council basically wants to support this, because that's why they're doing it. Nevertheless, is this the best way to help the hospitality sector? Not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but I'd just be interested to know whether this is a nice dovetails with these highway charges, or whether it is actually the best way that we can help.
It's one I've really been thinking about, because when they announced national insurance and then they did the business rates, I was sort of trying to find a rabbit left in my hat for the budget. But the reality is we can't afford any rabbits anymore. So I was trying to think, well, what is it the businesses really need? And Johnny and I have always kicked around, you know, making it easier for businesses to set up and to engage in the area. And I think in truth, since COVID, we have been quite supportive of our businesses. We've really helped them with outdoor terracing, al fresco. Certainly we've been, you know, more generally permissive on hours and licensing and whatnot. And we're seeing the mayor is essentially now he's been given call-in powers on licensing. He's planned to pedestrianise Soho and sort of extend licenses if they've been blocked by council. So the whole national narrative has moved towards supporting hospitality. Started with sort of Robert Jenrick and the Tories back when you were still pretending to be one, and now it's sort of being continued in part by the Labour Party, even though they've axed them at the other end. As a council, I think we've seen the change on our streets. We've got our Making Spaces programme. Arguably, that's a far bigger subsidy than it is the revenue cost of the licensing income. We're spending a good few million a year building beautiful streets everywhere, really for the benefit of residents, visitors, but also for the businesses and trade. But it sort of goes hand in hand. It seems slightly odd to spend lots of money on the road and then follow up by saying, well, you need to do loads and loads of bits of paperwork in order to use it. So is it the best way? I would say the best way is salary cost, national insurance and business rates, over which we have a lot less discretion. This is one of the few elements we do have discretion over. Why you push that needle is, I suppose, why we're having the debate, but it's at least we're doing it.
Chairman, just checking, have any other councils introduced the same sort of scheme already?
Oh, yeah, there was plenty of councils with 2-year payment licenses. I mean,
shifted from 1 year to 2 years.
Well, 2 years only became legally possible in around March 2024. So prior to that, they would have had 1 year as well. So they did necessarily move to 2. So I could get a list, but there's certainly a proportion of the London authorities 2-year licenses.
Within London, I mean.
Yeah, with London, yeah.
Are we just saying mathematical?
Yeah,
by 2 for 1.
Yeah,
well,
one fee.
Yeah, well, we only process the application once, so there's only one application.
I think there is still scope on the summertime terraces because we're still hamstrung slightly by our ability to profit from them. For want of a better word, they are limited by the amount we can legally charge for stopping up the caravan.
No, Jeff, I'm telling you, all I would want confirmation is it has to be cost neutral. Or, and the paper doesn't highlight that anymore. It has to be cost neutral. We can't, because I don't think people will appreciate it. We're out on the doorsteps, the council's done this, council's done this. They won't even notice that we've done this for them. They won't, people won't, well, streetscapes, all that, everybody can see it. The optics are, oh, that's amazing. We can see it. But, on businesses, this blog on the street, won't even notice it. So all I'm saying is either we reduce the cost of the loss dramatically, or let's say, and then make it as cost neutral as possible.
So I think on my side of this equation, I've got to come up with how we can make the system more efficient in order to bring down the administrative cost of it. Probably Johnny needs to have a look at just what the fee levels are, and imagine you've been through that with original, where to set the levels, or where to set that nationally on there.
Well, on payment licensing, they are set statutorily. On our footway extension fees for some of our terraces, we do have some discretion, but it has to be related to the cost incurred. Yeah.
So there's probably a bit of scope, one way or the other on that one. I'm quite optimistic about how much we can save by having a proper digital transformation, not just in this area, but kind of all over the place, having 430 computer systems. Cyber-attack has really highlighted which ones we need to upgrade. So, that will be my focus of the year ahead, is to, because we don't want to limit services to residents, we have to save money in the way we deliver them. So the back office is where we've got to make the biggest savings first, but we're not going to be immune from it.
I think part of my problem is I appreciate everything that you say. But one of the things is that these guys are getting licenses, but they don't appear to have any social responsibility for the maintenance of their pavements or anything else. So they're getting the support, but actually they're merely turning up the work, opening up, creating mess. And that doesn't seem to be anything in this regime. And I appreciate about sex.
Yeah, sorry, let's interrupt. There's obviously terms and conditions attached when we post.
No, but all right, there are terms and conditions, but if you walk down Kenway Road, for example, you've got 3 in the lines They're not managing. They're not cleaning. So therefore, they have a commercial advantage, which is actually detrimental in part to residents. So it's a question about the balance. They're getting something which is in some places, if you think of over under, is actually quadrupling their space. And yet they, when we've spoken to them, they said, oh, well, that's not in our license. We don't have to do that. So they have a financial advantage, but they're not actually acknowledging the privilege of that license.
Yeah. I think
I'm just giving.
but I look, it's a give and take. You know, every license comes with rules that you have to adhere to, and then it comes down to us as to how strictly and how zero tolerance we approach those rules. So, you know, also Johnny and the team will be talking about strict enforcement being enforcement going forward, time banding. You know, if we look back even just a few years, we weren't really issuing, and you know how I love to issue an FPN. And we weren't really issuing fines, we weren't really issuing littering. It's not necessarily what we're talking about here, but we didn't have time banding, we didn't have a lot of the tools that give us the power to enforce. We had terms and conditions on licenses, tables and chairs, but it is also a numbers game, so there is only so many people.
As well as the figures we need to see, because in reference in this paper, it says that money can be achieved by fines. I'd actually like to see how many PCNs have been issued against
I'm sure that.
So I found a figure from like 23-24, and over a 10-month period that year, we issued 1,589 fixed penalties.
Have you got those breakdown by ward?
Yeah.
If you could possibly provide that, that would be useful.
That's the effort, what's the revenue?
Yeah, what's there, yeah.
So some are £150 fines, some would be 400.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a figure step.
We have to take that away and find out.
And, you know, benchmark us against other boroughs.
Are they, those fines, are they hospitality regarding?
No,
It's for any general.
It's for each company.
To Ian's point, if you're getting privilege, you're also getting more responsibility. And I think most of operators actually acknowledge privilege and work beautifully, but there will always be some challenging ones. And given that we are giving away £116,000 in a financial context, which is critical, could we actually implement harsher rules for the ones who don't take that responsibility or inheritance state?
I'm just going to take over under as an example. So I went in with that amazing space. One, they exceeded the amount of tables and chairs, put them up before they even got a license, then they exceeded the amount. And I said, do you think it'd be a good idea for you to wash your pavement because you've got coffee waste? And he said, it's not in my license, I don't have to do it. That's the council. So I think that they have quadrupled the amount of space that they have. That
We're
is an
talking,
advantage.
I completely agree with you. I'd love our businesses to behave like they should have, no problem.
Yeah,
But whether it's a 1-year license or 2-year license doesn't change what's in their terms and conditions or how we enforce them. Do I like more enforcement? Love it. Crack on, more the merrier. But there's also that thing of there's enforcement of have you got more chairs than you say? That's quite easy to solve and to resolve. The harm that they cause with staining and bags and whatnot, that's something that happens whether they have a license or not. People put bags out on the wrong day, wrong time, they ruin the pavements. It's associated from the license. We need an extra.
Section point is that this is food waste.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's probably got a reason.
I think you slightly digress.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So with this 2-year thing, we still have enforcement and stuff, so it's still going to cost money for the second year. So how is that covered? Because
So at the moment, our pavement license application fees don't cover enforcement. They
Okay.
cover the application
just
process.
that's all.
So that's it. So that's the sort of general council budget.
He's gone. Jim, do you know?
One second.
Sorry, Arian speaking.
Oh, sorry.
statutory is 500, so I don't know, hypothetically, I'm just thinking, you could give the option to businesses, and it's just an idea, that you can pay one of 2 years reduction of 350 each, so we would be 700. So you pay one of 700, that's for 2 years, or you pay each year separately. We're giving you a subsidy.
You need separate licenses for that, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be able to do it under one.
Yeah.
Because there's a limit for having one license.
It's capped at 500.
Yes, capped at
It's
500.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but giving subsidy, so you won't be paying. I don't know if it's statutory. Is that the exact figure you have to pay, or could you reduce that?
It's just an application fee. It's up to £500.
Yes, exactly.
We could charge less.
So what I'm saying, one application that could go 350, do 700, you pay one off, so you can automatically. Or you do 350, so we're giving a subsidy of 150.
But that would actually, in terms of the cost to council, that wouldn't work. There is obviously processing costs. So if we have to process twice, we're incurring costs. So
So yeah, then 2 years, you would obviously lose 8 years of revenue. I mean,
The variations at 350 caps, aren't they?
that's a renewal, yeah.
Renewal, so it's 500 for new grants, 350 for variable.
Victoria was next.
Awesome. Councillor Kilmiley, about these FPNs, because it does say in the financial implications of this, the revenue loss of gross revenue reduction of £116,000, it says will be financed by more targeted issuance of fixed penalty notices for highway and environmental crimes. And we did raise it earlier, but it couldn't come to a particular conclusion. What do you see that we're not doing when we just issue more FPNs?
Well, we weren't issuing very many before.
But for what?
Got us doing that. So even though it's 1580 and not all of them are hospitality related, they come with a fine. So there is money being generated through, and the action of antisocial behaviour at large. Then we have Kingdom, which are taking a far more sort of targeted approach on specific issues. There is, and Johnny and I have sort of kicked this around, is how do you task the people? Because there's only so many people. You can either get them going around bicycles on pavements or people putting rubbish out on the wrong day, or you can get them patrolling high streets, really going after time banding, really going after whatever. So there's a discussion, collective discussion of if you've got one guy for an 8-hour shift, what do you want them doing? And I think probably it does need a slight pivot towards this sort of activity, because we also pick up a lot from our residents that, in the evenings, they want somebody walking the street, keeping an eye on things. So it's not even there that they're there to do fines, but we know that people don't feel they're safe at night. There's crime in the city, watches, cars, all of that stuff. So do we want our people being a bit more visible and less with the fine book out? Or do we want them literally going through the bins to find somebody that's put it out on the wrong day on one street that doesn't have any businesses on it? So the totality of fines has increased. The totality of revenue we generate from fines has increased. Now it's just, do we do more of it over here, do more of it over there? And that's probably a recommendation or something that Johnny takes.
I think going back to that paper, everything has been summarised. The question really for a lot of us remains, if we're going to do 2 years for the first one, is there any room for conditioning these extra privilege you get into business, or conditions, or terms and conditions?
Well, at the moment we have about 27 standard conditions, and those conditions do give us, quite broad scope to act should we choose to. So it covers all the topics like cleanliness, about, people in a particular area, noise, sound systems, all that sort of thing. So we do have a full suite of conditions, and certainly when we devised those conditions, we considered they covered all topics of interest, and they would have been approved by this committee a few years ago.
So is there any way we can actually remember it? China, you said there's 2 verbal warning and then a letter, and then finally an inspection. Is there a way that we can actually reduce those steps? And then saying, if you go down the 2 year for the price of one, well, actually the number of warnings will be significantly reduced if we have a complaint.
Yeah, I mean, that's not before the committee for decision, but it's certainly within your scope because we had such a paper two years ago, I think, when we introduced our current approach.
And we added the thing about the toilets as well.
Yeah.
Jim, going back, sorry, Steph.
No, that's all. That's my question. Very pragmatic. It's just like, let's make it work for everyone, but also let's make it work for the residents so that we're not giving away money to business without a certain level of certainty. Makes sense.
Getting more social responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're giving something to the business, we have to actually accept that we are going to be slightly less tolerant.
Or
So,
that,
I mean, really-
or that it is a privilege. It's
It's very important if you want to look at the conditions. You said 27, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems we have a lot of that in place, but it seems what we're all saying is there has to be more enforcement.
Yes.
There has to be penalties generated, and we have to be proactive on the enforcement side. I think that's-
Can I just ask, James, when was the last time that somebody had a license removed?
Moved, I believe it was before the pandemic.
Okay, so the answer is it doesn't happen. That tells a story that I think that colleagues who will be part-time no longer here need to do well.
Yeah, but that, I mean, fair, I think that is fair because we've had issues with the summertime terraces where you restricted the use. But we do need to then have I'm not doing joint job, but we do need then a mechanic which says, good behaviour earns you the right to come back again.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly.
Because businesses change hands. We can't just put a black spot on a business because an owner 10 years ago has done something wrong. So maybe it's, they get 1 year of absence and they're allowed back, whatever it may be. But taking away their tables, as you say, for over under, that's a quarter, 4 times what they've got indoors, and they would sit up and take notes.
They might actually take notice. But historically, because we're such a kind and fluffy council, sorry.
We don't have Doreen measuring every chair. Yeah.
We had gender same.
We don't have the manpower to sort of, always patrol the area to make sure businesses, because we don't, and we see it. We always wait for residents to say, we're so fed up with it. And then it takes the process. I mean, I think when residents complain, we are very, very prompt, very proactive. But I just don't think historically we are very good at monitoring because we don't have the funds, we don't have the manpower. So, we're giving this away, we're losing money. That should be something in return, something in return, because I don't think anybody's going to notice it, Jeff. I would love to see some data.
I mean, I just go back to what is it that we're here to do. So, yes, we are a council, but we're also sort of custodians of the borough, and we want it to be fun, clean, safe, all of those things. And every single decision we take to make somebody's life easier through planning or through, even adult social care, we voted on something the other night. Every time you simplify something that comes at a cost to the town hall, we don't audit that cost. This one is very stark because we're looking at it, but allowing people to do double glazing takes away thousands of planning applications to which we could have collected hundreds of thousands of pounds of officer time and cost. As we're looking through the scope of having less money, and I appreciate this costs money, but as we look through the scope of having less money and doing less things, the things we do, we have to do them more efficiently. And if that is monitoring with cameras or with patrol vehicles, or whatever it is, rather than just waiting for someone to email us with a problem.
I think the onus is on restaurants to complain rather than proactive enforcement.
That's what we're saying.
Quite possibly, and that's probably similar across most enforcement.
But then the residents would say, why are we monitoring? Why are we? Because, look, it's not just President Chelsea. It's a societal problem where nobody takes civic pride. Even businesses, exactly. So, it's a bit of education. We don't have I go back to my own point, will we have the funds to monitor it? Doing this, we don't want it to be the residents' job to patrol it.
Yeah.
So we have to have something quite a strong link. We give you this, but absolute zero tolerance on everything. Late fees, not keeping payments. I mean, it has to be, something has to happen.
I'm all for polluter pays, because if you are a good, responsible business, frankly, if you're a good, responsible business, you should have a 20-year license, because why do you need to fill out paperwork every year? And if you are a naughty business, we'll take it away from you. I mean, that's that, maybe we do need to ratchet it back up. Obviously, post-COVID, the world did change. Civic fry fell apart. People are throwing masks everywhere, coffee cups everywhere. And we've now snapped to having lots of ticketing. Might not be in the right places, but we're doing a lot more timing. Can we do more? Yeah. I think we should reward those that behave and play to the game that we want them to, and punish those that don't. But we do also then have to provide a mechanic for them to get back to the good side of the fence. So
Do we have the funds to do that?
well, because the ticketing will generate it. I'm quite confident. I mean, £100,000 sounds like a lot of money, but in 108 million of potential cuts and 137 total cuts that we're looking at, we're going to have to make efficiency savings of 40 million just on our digital side.
Sure.
So will I be able to give you a precise figure of how much we save just on the pure licensing side of it? No. But the holistic changes, we'll still be processing it. We still have to give people money, like all the things that council's obligated to do. But if we can do it at a much reduced cost, next off the branding error on that. I'm going to make sure Johnny and Tansy proper grilling.
Yeah, looking at this from a global side, your global side financially, does it make sense to you and should we?
Yes, but I don't say that.
Use leadership.
Of course, I think it's what we should be here to do. We should reduce the burden on businesses so that they can provide the services we want. But that's not to say they should get away with absolutely everything. But we take exactly the same approach across the council. We're trying to be less the paperwork bureaucracy of the town hall. We're trying to liberalise these things and make it just more frictionless.
So presumably there will be a gain and we will have make the money back on another side of the balance sheet.
Well, we have to.
Exactly. It's not just looking at it. So
you now have a number that this costs us. In my mind, 120,000, that's less than 1,000 penalty tickets. There's your challenge.
Does anyone else have anything? Okay.
I have a point, but it's not really for Jen. It's just something I'd like to throw out. So if that's all right, unless it's just with me.
I'm here.
The thing that I'm slightly wrong with is so much of these things are not specific to hospitality, and I've got no problem with making things easier for hospitality, but I do also hear from retailers around, Portobello and Goulburn, where the issue can be that, it's often tables and chairs obscure shop fronts. There are some other factors that play in, but are not generally as good for retailers. And I do feel that retailers suffered more on balance. That's not a competition, but since COVID and lockdown and all of that. So obviously, as a council, we control hospitality in a way that, to a greater degree. So this is really just the point I wanted to make in general. We're talking about, making things easier for businesses. I know that this is what we have control over to a greater degree, but I just also would just like to place it in people's minds that retailers aren't often getting the breaks, and sometimes they are actually suffering is a strong word, but sometimes they're actually, doing worse as a result of the, huge amounts of outdoor dining areas. So I just want to make that point.
very good point. Now, let's get back onto this. James, can you explain, Jen? Thank you very much. It's really helpful.
Johnny, mind me not.
Now, James, can you explain now the different options we have in terms of voting on this item?
Okay, so this was a schedule of fees was put forward for decision. But my governance colleague confirmed it's not black or white. I mean, I think there is scope for you to change the schedules and make a recommendation and see both on it. And there are, in terms of when we need these fees, some of them are more important than others. For the British summertime tariffs, we normally would send them out the guidance for this forthcoming season the day after committee. So we would usually, within the guidance, all the fees they can expect, basically. So this is when we would announce, what our intentions are. Now, nobody is expecting, so I presume they don't read committee papers, nobody's expecting 2-year licenses necessarily. But if we were to introduce them, well, then they would be made aware of that probably as soon as tomorrow or the weekend. Basically, we're going to incorporate it into our guidance. What we do need, regardless of which way you go, we will need to inform them very soon because it takes a while to organise the temporary terraces. So,
The chair, can you make recommendations? Yes. We can certainly discuss what options you're considering, and then obviously we can help shape, what
yes,
viable. Obviously, there's the recommendation in the report, which is about 2 years for the summertime terraces, isn't there?
yeah.
But if you could give us steer as to what you're thinking, so you try and keep the option simple.
Are we tying up your hands? Or do we have time, if we say, okay, we don't want to move on to today, can you come back with more information?
Absolutely. I mean, we have to do it like extremely quickly. But we could do more information, or what we could do is we could approve some elements now and then decide on other elements. Rachel.
I see.
What's the priority?
I think what we really, and so in terms of our fees, in terms of payment licensing, it doesn't actually change. It's exactly the same fee. The question is whether we're doing it for 1 year or 2 years. So the priority is actually for these summertime terraces, the fee that we need to send out and invite them to pay, which we intend to do in the coming days, which is
Page 11.
page 11.
Page 9.
Page 11, yeah, oh yeah, it's only table 3. The far right column.
I would suggest in future, if we have this kind of an item, that the league members should come to the meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really helpful that we can ask the questions directly. Yeah.
Can we take the opportunity of recirculating the 27th condition? So that we're really up to speed and so what there's not.
Tables and chairs, but paper license tables.
Yeah.
It's just if there's any way that we might be able to gain something, is it possible for us to have a look at the conditions that stand at the moment?
That's after this committee.
That can be sent. That's not, it doesn't have to be, it's not relevant to what we're voting on.
And would there be any opportunity to change some of the wording, or is that?
Not as part of today.
Not as
a separate issue.
Today we're dealing with this.
Can I make a suggestion or a recommendation? Given that the paper is about fee schedules.
Yeah.
The financial implications is like a very small paragraph.
Yes.
And that really needs to be expanded so that we do get the global amount of what we're taking in, what we might lose, and etc. Because,
And the reasons
to have just one little paragraph is not sufficient.
There's some historic.
And but exactly, and just the financial implications can't be just one little. By the way, we might be losing £160,000. It's got to have a lot more of it than that.
We need a global picture, not just.
Monetary breakdown.
Yeah, exactly. And framework and context would help, I think, for the next. Do you feel we could vote on this today, and what aspects of it can we vote on?
Yes. Yes.
Well, you couldn't vote for starters on the actual recommendation, and if that then is rejected, then we can
I'm happy with that. Is everyone happy with that?
Sorry, Sarah, what did you say, sorry? What about any change to the payment schedule? To the-
I mean, that's a separate
That's a
thing.
separate.
Yeah.
I'm happy to vote on the 1 or 2 year.
Yeah, I think that's what we're voting on today. And then everyone made some very good suggestions for future. And to send over the 27 conditions, if you could circulate them to the committee.
So, Chair,
Yeah,
1 to 2 years, are we talking about payment license or both?
Well, you can split it up, but in terms of the recommendation, it was basically henceforth, all authorizations for tables and chairs on borough roads would be for 2 years. That's essentially what the paper says.
Do we not want to approve that, conditional upon, the recommendations?
We need to discuss.
Yeah, we need to discuss and we can't just say, okay, we work for 2 years. Because, I mean, am I the only one thinking that way? Because we want to make it conditional.
let's talk.
Sorry, we need to, so I think, first of all, we need to consider the initial recommendation, whether it applies to pavement licenses, non-pavement licenses like Highways Act 1981 one outside retail, and for the summertime terraces.
Yeah.
So I think you need to consider whether you're happy to have 2 years for that, or whether you want to go for 1 year, whether you're happy with the fees for all that.
But to me, it's not independent.
Yeah, they want to add.
We want to make it conditional, that if we, if these conditions are done, then we're happy to go ahead for 2 years. So
Sorry, what
like
conditions?
conditions in the sense that there'll be zero tolerance on, we're not wasting more money. To me, it's all about finance. So, so to mitigate the loss of our finance, we also have to have conditions that, we're still not being very gentle and lenient by, making sure that they follow the conditions.
Where these conditions are attached to.
So an example would be, for example, enforcement, instead of having two verbal warnings and a written warning and then whatever.
Yeah.
The condition may be, it's a straight up, if you maybe get one warning and then you're done.
Yeah.
Perhaps by way of some kind of informative, because I don't think it's really for this committee to kind of
It's not
stop.
for this committee, it's kind of based on overall environmental health enforcement policies, so Shannon's just explained to me as well. We've always adopted a step-phased approach to enforcement. So if we want to make any changes, I think it's not for this committee, it may end up taken higher up and a decision made then. I think the original decision was agreed by, do you remember who it's agreed?
It's agreed by this committee and 2 or 3 years ago was the thing.
Yes.
That was
fourth stage.
that was the revocation procedure, that wasn't the general enforcement procedure as such.
Yeah.
So James, when we asked about PCNs, actually, what would be useful to know is how many of them are attributed to hospitality.
The vast majority wouldn't be attributed to.
I mean, but.
Yeah, they're mostly
So
tied
it would be
to.
interesting to know how many were, and actually, given that I have a councillor next to me who represents a ward where there are very many of these places, I think by ward would be even better.
Of course it would.
But because we're trying to change something here to.
You're trying to break it.
That was having our previous procedure would have been good for the 1 year, however, now it's 2 years, so it's understandable that they may want to, may want to change that. So how can we enforce that? Because if they want to say yes to it, we can move it.
We can't add conditions to this today, we're just looking at 1 year, 1 year or 2 years, that seems to be the options on the table, and the amount of the fees, I think that's what we're looking at today. Separately, you can look at the conditions and enforcement.
That's a separate issue.
completely separate.
But we can put it on an informative. Can't we?
Well, it could be put in the minutes, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not as informative as such, it can just be documented as part of the minutes.
Yeah, so the way our standard license is, obviously you've got the picture of the license area at the front, the times, the address, and then the 27 editions at the back. The way it's formatted, there isn't really space for informatives. What we do have is a covering letter, and we do include information in the covering letter. So I suppose we provide information.
So what is the legal standing of the letter?
Well, the letter just sets out what our intentions are, and it is indeed our intentions that we're going to take a very tough line. We can express that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That would be our policy. That makes sense. we can't rewrite everything here. That's not why we're here today. And what we can do is take into account what many of the comments have been and put that in the letter. But there's also a mistake that on the enforcement, whether it's the procedure, whether it's a year or 2 years, the procedure, the process is still the same, right?
Yeah.
If you're enforcing, you're not going to just say we're drawing it out and giving them a chance for 2 years. I think that has to be clear. It has nothing to do with whether it's a year or 2 years.
Okay, also, where we are today is, you know, kind of sending this paper back, putting in the information that we want, and us all getting it again and having another discussion is not really an option because you haven't got time.
Yeah.
So I would also make the recommendation that, you know, in future, this comes earlier to the committee.
Yeah.
So if you have this kind of a problem again, we need this kind of clarification in that, you know, we actually, you know, it's kind of like there isn't really time for us to do that. That's what I'm hearing, or it would be very difficult for everyone. And so that would be my recommendation, that it would come earlier, that we would have a committee earlier. And so that if we needed, you know, please rewrite this paper with all the information in it that we require.
Okay, let's have our lawyer make a comment now. What practical?
Moving forward to voting, I think we'll have like a tiered. There's the recommendation at the outset so that will be 1 year, 2 years across the board for all the fees. And then perhaps these, depending on what the result of that is, 1 year with those fees. I don't know if there'll be a third option, but I think they seem to be the two options on the table at the moment. So I think you're happy with the level of the fees, but it seems to be whether 1 or 2 is the same, clearly that against the 1 or 2. So you're happy to kind of have those two options as your voting options? Just
What would be the third option?
I don't know whether you suggest. No, I'm just thinking out loud as I'm going along. I'm not getting a sense that you're through the amount of fees. I'm getting a sense that it's.
Well, we are clearing them out because if it's 2 years, it's like a phase and they are clearing.
Yeah, so the 1 year would resolve, yeah.
Exactly.
So if you're ready to move to the vote, I think the first voting, can you show by hands who's for the recommendation for 2 years? So,
Make a decision.
So 4 of you are for 2 years, sorry?
No, it's more 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So Councillor Burns, Councillor Evans, Councillor Lindsay, Councillor Schmetterling and Councillor Dunn. So that's 5 for the 2 year. Against, presumably, everybody else? Is everybody against that 2 year? The remaining people?
No, I'll go for the 1 year, definitely.
So hang on, so vote 2 year. 1 year. Right, 1 year with those fees. Can you put your hands up if you're in favour of voting for one year licenses?
I just find it very difficult to make this decision. Because,
No, do we not have the chance to abstain?
Abstain.
Yeah, abstain. Yes.
Don't make a decision.
So,
sorry?
Can I just say one thing?
Abstaining, give your opinion.
Can I just say one thing? Can I just say one thing? Just to reiterate, it is basically cost neutral, right? Is that what you're saying? Like it would, it's not a loss. No, it's not. Wait, it's not a loss, though.
The figure represented isn't a figure of loss, but there will be some loss. So Councillor Kamali was quite clear that the figure presented in the report it relates to revenue, but he doesn't foresee our costs falling by the same amount, because he recognises that, you know, there's people sat in the room, will still be sat in the room.
So basically, but again, just maybe I sound a bit stupid, but it's okay. So basically, what I'm saying is because we cannot move this money around, say this pot of 263,000, say per year currently as it stands, we cannot, if there's any profit in that, we cannot utilise it anywhere except in this specific domain. Yes.
Well, it's sort of it's basically a line on the general council budget.
Yes.
So it remains as a line.
Yeah, what I would say is I can't make an informed
judgment on this. Because as Councillor Rossi and many have said, there hasn't been anything from, okay, we've had Councillor Kamala. And that's the reason why I would abstain, because, we need comparatives, we just need more data, but as we're running out of time. So that's.
So in relation to the first vote for 2 years, 5 and 4, and the rest of you were abstaining, there was no definites against, hands up against. In relation to the second vote for the 1 year licenses for the different types, what was were you just all abstaining? Sorry, can I be clear? The 1 year.
That was just stay as is. Anyone want to stay as is?
Yeah, the line.
I mean, I want to keep the 1 year.
You like Fiona? Did you want to say something else now?
Yeah, there was a possibility. I'm just
Yeah. So we did wonder, because obviously with the summertime terraces, time is not really on our side. So if you're happy with the level of the fee, whether that's 1 year or 2 year can be decided in the future, but it would actually enable us to start that process to actually send out the expression of interest. At this stage, we don't have to tell them whether it's 1 year or 2 years.
Would that not be confusing?
Well, they've only had it for 1 year in the past, so I think their expectation of things. One. They're expecting. Their expectation, and that is just so that we can at least start the process to actually get these in. We're not actually, the payment license comes later, and again.
It does, but we normally give them the guidance that explains everything.
Yeah.
Can we go? So I think we need to go for an adjournment just to kind of discuss the voting on it, just to be clear. If you can just like,
Well, Sharon has prepared a report with fees and she knows the ins and outs of it, but she has to leave at 1 to attend another meeting. So I don't know if this can be adjourned, gives us a bit of time to think in the meantime. And the first report be adjourned after we discuss the second report. I'm a bit conscious that.
Do you want to go for a 5-minute break for now, just so everyone have a 5-minute break, then reconvene to do the licensing?
Just
then come back and once we've had a chat with that.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll take a break for 5 minutes. So we're going to start the vote again because you can't vote meeting. That you have to be at a home meeting. So Lindsay will lay down the parameters.
Right, sorry, just having a discussion in governance. Abstentions, obviously we're going to re-vote again on this particular item, but abstentions would mean that the vote would carry. So you either, if you don't want this recommendation, you have to refuse it. It has to be for or against, and a reason why you're against, and then a proposal for alternative options. So what I suggest we do is just so you're aware of that. I think the first thing we need to do, and if I'm wrong, is we'll then go on to Sharon's paper in a minute. Have a think about what you want to do for the later one in terms of voting. But the first option would be to consider the recommendation for the 2 years, and you vote for or against. And then obviously, if there's more refusals again rather than supports, then we could go to consider other options, which could include 1 year, or 2 years for the throughways, 1 year for the terraces, or other kind of variations on that thing. So we're going to park that one for now, but just be aware of that. I think Sharon needs to do your report now because of time constraints.
Yeah, and also we need to have the paper in future earlier. Because they need, and you can put that, can we put that in? And can we also put in, like to have the lead member present?
Yeah, could I say, the reason I abstained was that I felt that the committee was being bounced into a decision because you had to tell people the next day. And I have had an assurance now from Fiona that will not happen again. And that is to do with apparently the cyber attack. And also, I'm just tabling or whatever at meetings, but, we need to, if we make a decision, we need to be able to not make a decision and for it to come back to us and not to be told, but we need to tell people tomorrow. And that's why I abstained, but now I've been reassured that that won't happen again.
So we could do the vote to get on with it.
Fine, do you want to do?
Vote, everyone's ready.
It's fresh. So on the recommendation, so can we have for or against in terms of 2 years as per the recommendation?
Both licenses, footway extensions and pavement.
For both, for all. So 1, 2, 1, 4.
Almost unanimous, almost 2 people not voting. 3 people voting.
2, 3, 4.
Okay.
6.
2. Wait, got another one. We got another one.
Sorry, who's no. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of you. 1 Burns. So 9, is that correct?
8.
9. So that is to have 9. You've got the listed Polly.
Yeah,
9. It's 9. All right, so that is for as per the recommendation.
Yes.
Just on that.
Just on that basis. Okay, so it's passed then. So we don't need to go to.
We also just for the record have those against the recommendation.
Yeah.
And those abstaining.
We're not going to
You can explain. Still explain, it just doesn't hold the, yeah.
On through for 2 years. For all of them.
And can you add that the committee has requested that next year they get it earlier?
Yeah, earlier.
Okay.
And
But you also need far more data.
Yes, information. And also that like it presented by the lead member.
Yeah.
And vouchers.
Yeah.
Can I ask officially the chair so that you can write to the environmental committee and to look at the state-based enforcement to reduce perhaps from 3 or 4 steps to 2 or 3?
Is that within our remit?
It can separately be
But
advised.
can that be put on the record?
You can certainly ask it, but it doesn't form part of the decision today.
No, I appreciate that.
It can be
I think
requested from us.
the enforcement mechanism. You can certainly have it.
If they review it.
We'll add it as a request, yeah,
Enforce the
We
mechanism.
request that they review it.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's just for enforcement policy.
yes.
Yeah, you know.
Just on papers and shares or across the board?
Across the
All of them. You got that down to a month. Yeah. Right, so that one has passed.
Well.
Thank you. Right, future.
Okay, we are now, in 7 more. Okay,
So on that script, yeah, sorry.
yeah.
It's different. It's not here.
Okay, so we're going to have,
Is it not item
Sharon-
5?
It's different on my script.
it's on a different,
Yeah, it's item 5 on the agenda, yeah.
okay, so Sharon and Fiona, our senior licensing officers, will make a presentation now. And again, it's a review of the licensing fees report. Folks. Okay,
Yes,
so we'll have to vote on that.
I'm hoping this will be less contentious than with James. This is our annual review of our licensing fees. A lot of you will have been at the meeting last year. And you may recall that we did look at this in some detail. I think it was in December 2024, before the annual meeting in February 2025. So we do have a methodology for calculating these fees, and it is based specific on the license type, the application type, the amount of officer work involved, the grade of officer who is doing that work. So all of that is built into our fees. And we have some quite complex spreadsheets, which I think we've demonstrated to you last time. Basically, we put in our figures and it comes up with this wonderful figure, which is the figure that we've been charging in the past. So we've reviewed them as much as we can this year. There are some kind of caveats there because our fees are based on what's called Part A and Part B. So Part A is to cover the processing costs, and we can quite confidently estimate what those are going to be for an application. We then have what we call Part B costs, which is the ongoing cost. And unlike pavement licensing, we factor in things like enforcement, claims, anything really to do with that we do for that particular licensing regime that falls outside dealing with an application. So even things like maintaining our database, if we have to produce statistics, we factor all of that in. And we come up with a figure which we then effectively apportion across the number of premises that we have in that particular license. So, for example, for special treatments, we've got roughly 250 licenses, but we deal with quite a lot of complaints. Our officers got to go on training. There's a lot more that is factored in to that particular license than perhaps something like a scrap metal dealer's license. One of the caveats with the Part B fees is because it's apportioned across the number of premises that we have, we've not had access to our databases. We've had to use the figure that we had last year. So we know that last year we had 250 special treatment as an example. This year, on the 1st of January, we might have had 270, or we could have had 220. The fact is, we don't know. So I've had to use the figures for last year to as a baseline for how the overall figure for the Part B should be apportioned to each premises. So most of the fees are fairly modest, the fee increases. Our fees generally do come slightly under the recommended, in this case, I think it's 5% was recommended. But our officer rates, which we get from finance, I think it's the officer rates for each grade officer for the coming year,
they haven't increased by 5%, so that's why our percentage increase is less than the expected 5%. But these are the figures that we feel that we can justify if we are challenged in court. We can stand up and say, yes, we've costed this out, this is how much it costs. The animal licence fees, those fees have increased more because of the fact the inspections for these licences are done by the Corporation of London, City of London. And you have to be a qualified animal health inspector in order to undertake these inspections. The fact is we don't have enough animal licences to justify having employing somebody who is just an animal health inspector. The City of London do this for most London boroughs. And we've they provided us with their inspection fees. In some cases, their fees have gone up quite considerably. I think for zoo licensing, the maximum increase for one of their inspections, it went up by 42% year on year. Now, a lot of these licenses for animal welfare, for scrap metal dealers, for sex shops, sexual entertainment venues, these are pretty much paper exercises because we don't have any licenses. So we calculate a fee based on the experience of dealing with other licensed rights and what we think will happen if you get one of these applications through. So it is, as I say, for a lot of these fees, it is largely a paper exercise. We look at, you know, what other licenses and what's happened in the past and make, I would say, an educated guess as to what would happen. For fees where, like gambling fees, where we have some licenses, special treatment fees, we're in a much stronger position because we know what's happened in the past and we use that as an indicator of what's going to happen in the future. And we do review it every year and it does change year on year. So, you know, some years we might get more complaints. So that will bump our enforcement costs up. But equally, if we make some changes to our processes and automate some of the application processes, those fees might come down. So it's constantly being looked at, you know, to make sure that one, we're recovering our costs, two, that we're not overcharging, and three, we can justify these costs if we are legally. So I'm not going to say anymore. I'm here for questions.
Do you have any questions? Critique?
Thank you for that, Sharon. As always, very clear. Now, two questions. On the casinos, actually, sorry, let me step back. Are you saying that the maximum we're allowed to increase is 5%? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So with, if I take gambling fees, there is a maximum permitted fee.
Right. Which is what?
It's in, it's, if you look at appendix A, which is on page 21, it's in the full column, it says maximum. So that's what we can maximum charge for those particular licenses under the Gambling Act. There is a recommendation every year from the Cabinet Member for Finance as to what we should increase across the board. And I think this year the recommended increase was 5%. But because our licence fees are based on cost recovery, they might increase more or less than the 5%. Because we're costing it out. With these fees, we are costing it out as to the amount of fees involved.
So this percentage increase basically makes us cost neutral.
It makes us cost neutral. It only makes us cost neutral for those particular licenses. So as the question was asked earlier, you know, if we make a loss on one, can we recoup on another? The answer there is no.
Right.
So we can only charge what's reasonable for a gambling application based on the work involved in that gambling application. The fact that premises licenses, which is probably where we lose money because they are statutory fees and they've never increased since 2005. If we make a loss there, we make a loss. We can't recoup that from gambling or special treatments or anything else.
So why with existing casino and then adult gaming centres, I don't particularly understand the difference, but on one you've got the 2,000 and the other you've got 532.
So we've got 5 existing casinos and the only way they've already extended their hours, so they've all got 24-hour licenses. They did that when the so on standard variation, they're just going to be applying, and none of them have got special conditions, so they're only subject to the mandatory condition. So all they're going to be applying for is to vary their plans. That's all they can do, is vary their plans. Now we've looked at applications that have come before, and the percentage, what bumps up the cost is the percentage of applications that receive objections, because they end up before this committee. And the fact is, an application by an existing casino to vary their plans is highly unlikely to come before this committee. Nobody has dealt with these applications. What is going to come before this committee, and came before it recently, is an application to vary casino to relocate it. That we would expect to generate objections, and in this particular case, it generated quite a substantial amount of objections. The fact is, the most that we can charge for a variation is £2,000. Yeah. So, on the one hand, you've got a variation which the casino might make because they're making some internal changes. That's not going to come before this committee, so we're going to charge them £532. On the other hand, you're going to have variation to relocate casino, which is going to come before the museum 9 times out of 10. So we're going to charge the maximum. Likewise, if you go to adult gaming centres, they are quite contentious. So if you get an application for an adult gaming centre to be seen in school, that is going to generate a lot of objections. So we're going to charge the maximum there. Then you've got a new grant where a provisional statement is issued. So if somebody makes a provisional statement, what they're basically doing is they're making this application. They're saying, okay, we want to have this gaming centre. We don't yet know exactly all the detail of how it's going to operate, but we've got a general idea. So they make their provisional statement, people object. Fine. If you issue the provisional statement, they then have to apply for the grant, the new licence. And the thing there is, if you are making an application for the grant of the licence where there's a provisional statement, if you could have objected at the first stage and you didn't, you are prohibited from objecting when they come to apply for the licence. So you can, and also if you've already lodged your objection at the provisional stage, and you then make the same objection at the grant stage, again, I think you're not able to do that because your objection has already been considered, and the committee's agreed we're going to give you this provisional statement. So that is why there is a lower fee for a new grant where the provisional statement has already been issued, because you are barred from objecting if you could have objected at the provisional statement. So that's just as an example.
Just to take you on that point, it's if somebody's had a provisional statement and they come back, does that inhibit people to object at the second stage if they've never objected before?
Yeah, because
it can only be done at provisional stage.
The time, I mean, again, we're talking hypotheticals here because we've not had any, but the Act allows it. So the provisional statement is basically often, there is also the same thing as the licensing act. It's where you have a developer. He's going to say, well, I'm going to develop this site. I want to put a hub here, or I want to put a gaming centre here, or whatever. He wants to have some assurance when it comes to the licence, that licence is going to be granted. So in fact, the procedure that he goes through on the provisional statement is identical to having to the procedure to actually get the licence in the first place. The only difference is is that he doesn't have the precise detail of how he's going to operate this.
So sorry about this, if you have a scenario where you have an existing adult gaming centre and it decides it's going to acquire another site.
Yeah.
Therefore, looking at this schedule, the existing license that applied to site A could be transferred to site B without it coming back to committee.
No.
It's got to come back to committee.
No, so the only, sorry, the only,
I'm just hearing it.
the only license that can transfer from one site to another is a casino.
All right, so
It's only the casino, and it was a specific provision that was put in the Gambling Act because you cannot get a new casino license in the UK unless the borough where you're citing it had bid for one of those new casino licenses, and there was only 14 when the Act came into effect in 2007. So we can never have, under the existing legislation.
I'm just looking at this, it says adult gaming centre, new licence, new grant.
Yeah.
New grant where a provisional statement has been issued, variation and transfer and reinstatement. So that's the reason why I queried whether or not the existing licence that applies to site A could be transferred to site B.
No, this relates.
What does transfer mean?
Transfer from person A to person B. And you can only apply for a premises licence, gambling premises licence, if you hold an operating licence. The Gambling Commission is responsible for issuing those operating licences. And so the fitness and proper test of whether or not someone's fit and proper, that lies solely with the Gambling Commission. It's not something for the council to consider as part. If they've got an operating licence, they've basically been deemed fit and proper.
Now, can you explain the difference to the committee between a gaming centre and a casino, and that the laws are different?
Yes, so casinos are traditionally the ones where you would go in and they would have the tables, card tables, table gaming, roulette and those sorts of things. Whereas adult gaming centres are largely the slots. So an existing casino will have slots in it. Casino will have slots in it, but it's not the sole focus of the casino normally. And
both places have bookies?
No, neither.
None of them?
No.
You can go into some of the places and place a bet on a horse.
You can, but they are
Betting.
they are betting terminals, yeah. Betting terminals. So your traditional betting shop, I mean, one of the fees that's not on here is track betting. We haven't put it on there. We haven't set a fee for that because we don't have any tracks. We don't have any stadium where you do track betting. But Hamilton and Fulham would quite. They may well have track betting because they've got a couple of. They've got 3 football stadiums. And you can have track betting at the football stadium, but we don't have any, so that's why we haven't included that. So for us, betting premises just means a betting shop, basically.
Yes. Again, I think this is more my ignorance, Sharon, my apologies. On the casinos where you said the variation, we haven't charged, we only charged 532 the progress fee. I won't name names because I'm not allowed to, but recently between my ward and a neighbouring ward, there has been a transfer of premises. So in case there would have been £2,000, but then there's been variations to it, and I think the amount of time that's been spent on it would 532 cover it.
So,
or am I misunderstanding?
So, but for that one, for the existing casinos, I mean, I would say because the existing casinos have already sorted out their hours, so they're not going to apply to vary their hours. They've got 24 hours.
No, it's been
that's under appeal.
Yeah,
Okay,
but what I'm saying is in that process,
okay, so,
there's time spent by officers everyone.
yeah,
So that variation is 532.
no, that variation is £2,000. Because it was, they were relocating that casino.
Right.
So if I leave that one to one side, because
Sure.
that's obviously been relocated and conditions have been added, which are
Sure.
subject to review. If I take the other 4 casinos that we have, other than relocating to another premises, the only variation that we can foresee them submitting is to alter their layout.
Yeah.
Because they've got 24 hours. The conditions they've got no special conditions, they just got the standard mandatory condition. So the only other variation that they can make is if they change their layout. And our experience of dealing with applications by casinos to vary their layout is that they do not change the objection. That's been our
So
experience.
their layout, if they acquire new premises, they have the same layout as they had before and transfer the whole thing to the new premises.
That's a variation to relocate. They're paying
So
2,000
together.
So the variation other than relocation is whatever variation they make to their internal structure, they might have a refurb, they might decide to knock a wall down here and put a wall up there or whatever. That's going to be the only type of variation that we would put all through the submission because there seems to be any other reason for them to vary. So that's why that fee is lower than the maximum because how it's so you're not quite objection, which is what they are.
And can I just ask, is it true that we only have 5 casino licenses? So that we can't have another one? And all that they can do is move? That includes a lot of concern.
Yes, and that's why we charge the maximum we can charge for the ones that want to relocate.
Is there a limit on gaming centres?
There's no limit on gaming centres, no, it was just on. I don't know why, I mean, they were quite restricted before when it's under the justice's license.
Sorry?
Thanks. Just a point, when I asked about money from one section to another, I was only thinking about pavement extensions to pavement, footway extension to pavement licenses, but even that's not possible. So anyway, the 42% up to 40% increase by City of London sounds like a lot, but I have to say, I haven't actually seen any fees, excuse me, reflect any fraction of that. The biggest one's about 20.
Yeah,
So why is that?
I think because
Why you mentioned the
if I look at zoo licensing, so the Part B fee, the 620 to 829, I think that's 42%. So if you look at the Part
Where am I looking? Yeah.
so if you take like page 25,
Yeah.
that Part B fee is made up of different elements, and one of those elements is an inspection by the vets.
We're only looking at the last column, and it's under 42 anyway.
No, there isn't. It's sort of, that's on the City of London fee, but because the fees, when they're calculated, they include elements that we deal with.
Okay.
It brings the overall
Sorry.
amount down. So although it says 21.73% increase on that fee, actually, most of that is because it's high because the Corporation of London fees have gone up.
Without that.
By 42, but ours might have only gone up by 3 or 4%. So it adjusts the whole fee.
So that is the place where we have some flexibility, because we can't choose what City of London does.
No, we can't.
But so it's only our top up that we can.
Yeah, and to be honest, as I say, for a lot of these, it is a paper exercise.
Yeah, of course.
You know, we read the legislation and we see what we have to do, and we kind of we're making assumptions.
My last question is, what does it mean under seasonal in the gaming section on page 22. It's existing casinos annual and seasonal per month. Does that mean if they want to have it for less than a year?
Yeah, so basically, it's like, a bit like an occasion, like a temporary event notice.
Oh,
okay. You can actually apply for a seasonal license for whatever period, so you might, June, July, August. And then in that instance, there is a lower fee, we charge per month, but we can only charge up to the maximum.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have any, but it is something that you can apply for under the Act, and so it's catered for in our fees.
I think if you said temporary, it might be more obvious.
Well, there is a temporary use notice, which is different than a seasonal license.
Okay.
It's
Anybody else, Stephanie?
Yeah, my question was seasonal as well. I didn't understand, but I mean, you explained really well, Sharon, about how you projected your fees for the application based on how controversial it's going to be, how much time and resources you expect. But on the actual annual fees for casinos and adult gaming center, taking the seasonal part away, and that's not a favorite exercise because we do have them. I'm still quite unsure why we can't bump that up to the maximum.
So when we're looking at the gambling fees in particular, one of the things that we look at is how often are we visiting in premises. And something like a games generally generates more inspections because it's on a risk rating basis, it's felt that the risk is slightly higher than casinos.
Yeah.
So that is why but those figures are factored in. The other thing that we actually is,
but not why going to one topic.
We've still got to be able to justify it, and when we look at all the different elements, how much time we spend on dealing with that. Generally speaking, our gambling premises don't generate a lot of complaints, so that is one of the factors into it. We do set aside some time for officers to investigate complaints, but the fact is we don't get the volume of complaints we do something like that.
Have you requested that?
We have, and we look at the volume, stuff like that. We can only recommend the fees that we feel that we can justify. Ultimately, the committee can make its decision, but we have been challenged in the past on not on gambling fees, but on set-top fees. It was that which was actually started in Westminster, and then basically, everybody had to look at fees that we were charging for sex shop, and we had to go back 6 years. And we had to look in detail at exactly what work did we do, how many complaints did we get, how many inquiries did we get about sex shops that we had to put enough time. When we looked at it, we realised that we could not justify that we've been charging, and so we had to refund 6 years worth of fees. Yes. So that's why now, basically since then, starting with Headlands, we have been much more vigilant, I guess, in looking at our fees every year, looking at the actual work that we do, and making sure that we feel that if we are challenged again, we can actually go there and we can show them our spreadsheet. We can say,
so you're logging you the hours of lawyers, basically, so you can put an audit within a few hours and justify it.
Exactly. So things like complaints, we know we you know, how many complaints we received about gambling premises. We can say, well, this was about an agency, this was about a casino or betting shop. So we can justify why we're charging the fees we're charging.
Councillor Lahey was next.
Yes, but, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sharon. I'm just looking at the new grant without professional statement. 25, 26, 1,207.
Which page?
21.
21, yeah.
Yeah. Then 26, 27, 1,229. That's increase of 22 pounds for the year. And you allow it to up to 3,000.
Yeah.
Why are we not charging more?
So again, with betting premises, we look at what's happened in the past when we've got a betting shop licensing and the level of opposition that it has generated. And if we've had, let's say we've had 5 applications for new betting shops, and if 3 of them received objection, then we factor in that if another one were to come in, the likelihood is 60, well, if we were to get more betting shop applications, the likelihood is, based on past experience, the likelihood is that it would be a 60% of them would receive objection or some level of objection. So, because our fees, our officer rate fees haven't gone up considerably, the fees, particularly for gambling, where there hasn't been a lot of movement, there hasn't been a lot of applications, other than casino applications. I can't remember the last time we had a betting shop application. The chances of us getting, we might get one every 5 years. So the increase there is because we're basing it on what we know has happened in the past. We might get it wrong, and it might be that every application that comes in from now on receives lots of objections. If that's the case, if 1 year there is a deficit, then the next year we can increase the fee to recover the deficit.
Or would it not be prudent just to have a little extra, or would that be objectionable?
I mean, we base it on what we know, on what's happened in the past.
Sure.
As I say, for a lot of these things, it's really a paper exercise, because if I take gambling, I think since 2007, so it will be only 20 years, we may have had 4 or 5 betting shops in the borough. For every one that's opened, one that's closed. We've got fewer betting shops now than we had when the Act came in 2007.
Vic had a question.
One, can you clarify how many adult gaming centres you have in Flora?
Great.
And can you possibly tell me what the difference is between a family entertainment centre and how many of those do we have in the Flora?
Okay, so an adult gaming centre is, you've got to be over 18, and you can go in there and there are specific stakes for the machines that you're playing. I don't know details. A family entertainment centre is one that you will see at Seaside, penny slots. We haven't got it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, did we go back to adult gaming centre? We did an inspection of Adlon. And what was quite interesting is the different machines and the different thresholds.
Yeah.
And they said that they were kind of looking at changing some of their machines and the value. So when you do an inspection of an adult gaming centre, is consideration made of the different thresholds on the different machines? And that's one of the reasons why it would be useful to have some inspections, because this was just mentioned as kind of almost in passing.
They have and when the officers, they have a list of what category machines each premises is allowed. And they go in and check against that just to make sure that they are complying. I haven't got all the figures to hand at the moment.
But it was just very useful, you know, during the visit, during the visit to see the different breed of machines or thresholds, as whether or not there was a limit on the amount of different threshold machines within. I don't know.
There are some limits on some machines, which I haven't got all that information to hand at the moment, but it's something that we can forward to you.
But just sitting there and watching people, but they would be the potential for some of the machines being more expensive.
We're gonna vote on this now.
Yes.
Everybody, we're gonna move on and vote on this now. Okay, I'll hand it over to Linda.
On the recommendation, we have a vote in favour of the recommendation, please.
Easy.
Everybody.
That's easy then.
Yes, thank you. These are approved. And we will carry on briefly with any other business, but the meeting, we would like to thank our officers. Thank you very much. The meeting is closed. And thank you to our excellent officers. Cameras off. Everything's off.